Firim in Exile Part 1. As my exile begins, I cannot help but think back on the events that led to our arrival. They doubted me, mocked me, conspired to replace me. Yet just as they unleashed their blades of doubt and skulked forward to strike me down, it happened. The geometry revealed itself, the fractals aligned. At long last, I found the way to Zereth Mortis. No other mind could conceive the formula required to succeed. Portal after portal, tuned and retuned, stretching out and looping back upon themselves. No wonder so many before me had failed. The fools among our expedition rushed to plunder the land's mysteries, and paid the price for their folly. Did I not insist that the first ones would not leave their secrets unguarded? The survivors learned their lesson and heeded my warnings. We found a safe foothold, a haven from which our work began, but our fragile harmony would not endure. Firim in Exile Part 2. The deeper we delved into the mysteries of Zereth Mortis, the more my colleagues became affected. Even Executor Alcareth, perhaps the most glory-driven of anyone in the expedition, began to regard the knowledge we gleaned as sacred. In time, Alera and the others perceived the great truth. We could not send word of our discoveries back to the Overseer. The secrets of the first ones were not to be plundered. Outsiders would only disrupt the crucial purpose of Zereth Mortis. We shattered our portals. I blotted out my translocation equations, even from my own mind. Any temptation that might lead us back to the outer realms was forfeit. Our hearts sang as we renounced our cartel designations. From that day forward, I was simply Firim, and while I did not seek to profit from the progenitor's knowledge, I did want to understand it. That is where the schism began. Firim in Exile Part 3. Why had I been burdened by the company of minds so small? Even in a land of infinite wonder, the dullards who work alongside me in Haven failed to appreciate the purpose that drove my every thought and deed. I had to reach the sepulchre. It was blasphemy, they claimed. The mysteries were too sacred, truths not to be approached or even pondered. They labeled me a heretic. When my back was turned, they sabotaged my research. Just as I neared translation of the new cipher, Kareth would send some meddling pilgrim to interfere. Our bitter feud stretched on and became irreconcilable. Finally, they declared me an apostate and banished me from Haven, the very foothold that I'd given them. Still, I bore this indignity in a manner befitting of one of my intellect and resolve. In exile, I would outpace them all, and so I did. Firim in Exile Part 4. Though access to the sepulchre continued to elude me, I learned much by observing the automata. Admittedly, I underestimated them at first. They seemed mere servitors, less capable of independent thought than even the muddle-minded attendants in Oribos. But like everything else in Zereth Mortis, they were part of a pattern, a geometry that shifted and expanded and contracted, as demanded by the duty put before them. After all, this land is no museum, no libraries of obscurities. No, it is a workshop, a forge where afterlives are fashioned. When I detached my consciousness from the limitations of perception, I saw the grand architecture of the progenitors put in place. Afterlives assembled according to the needs of the Arbiter's judgment. It was the automata who carried out these duties, forging flora, fauna, and terrain, encasing them in orbs to be sent out into the in-between like seeds falling into fertile soil. Do you see, do you understand as I do? Everything about the Shadowlands, everything, is a part of a pattern, a closed system in which nothing is lost. Even that which is seemingly destroyed is merely being reshaped for a new purpose. Myopic though they are, perhaps the attendants understand some small measure of this mystery. Firim in Exile Part 5. I observed many types of automata of varied sizes and shapes, guardians, builders, collectors, and a more petite variety that seemed to revel in duties of upkeep and repair. Besides an unwavering devotion to their obligations, these automata shared another notable trait, their language. They spoke not in words I could understand, but in tones and echoes. Know that I, Firim, am renowned for my linguistic skills. Though arrival in the Shadowlands imbues mortal souls with a knowledge of the words of death, many retain memories of languages they used on their worlds. And what is language if not a system of words and patterns, I ask you? So, yes, of course, I had absorbed countless languages during my interviews of mortal souls. Thus, you will understand my confidence that the language of the automata will pose little challenge. Never in my existence had I been so wrong. The language of the automata was not merely words, no. It was part of a parcel of the ciphers. The words themselves were keys to understanding the geometry, the fractals. There was so much waiting to be discovered, but it was when I encountered one of the rarest forms of the automata that my mind was truly opened. Fear and Exile Part 6. Automata were commonplace in Zereth Mortis, but not all types. One was exceedingly rare, like polished jewels among infinite grains of sand. The oracles. They sang songs to their kin, and so at first I thought they were unique only in appearance. But as I drew closer to one to better observe its duties, something unexpected happened. I heard its voice. And yet the term voice falls short. To be sure, I experienced the sensation of words being spoken in much the manner one does when conversating with a colleague, and yet this was more. I felt the words as much as I heard them. The thoughts entered my consciousness and conveyed their meaning to my entire being. What words did it offer? It spoke images, riddles, prophecies, and as they reverberated through my very core, I remembered my conversation with Eric too, and the thousand truths they told me of. Then it struck me, the oracles spoke both in one truth and a thousand, not as separate thoughts, but as one in the same instant. And if the oracles, entities left behind to oversee a workshop, could think in such terms, how much more complex must the minds of their makers be? Long have I scoffed at what I learned of the Titans, or the Void Lords, or demons of the Nether. I held Death's pantheon in higher regard, but now I know that they are just as limited. Truth lies not in one direction or another, but in their intersection. The first ones had parceled out their gifts, but gave no child all of them. No wonder these offspring bickered with such incessant jealousy. Their very nature was one of denial. At this realization I lost consciousness, for I had once again transcended into a new plane of thought. Firim in Exile Part 7. Every new discovery in Zereth Mortis drew me back to the mysteries of the first ones. I sought to understand their nature, yet each time I believed I was nearing an answer I found myself drifting further away. I considered again their design, the pattern, the lines, the curves, the arcs, and the angles. And turns, oh so many turns. The six forces that pointed towards a seventh, and yet denied it. For a long while I considered this seeming contradiction no more than another variable, an unknown waiting to be solved. But the song of the oracle continued to reverberate in my consciousness, and as I allowed my focus to soften, my grip upon the tangible to loosen, the geometry took shape in my mind. It was both six and seven. The six were one, and the seventh the other. Did they desire union? The song seemed to say otherwise. Both were, yet only one could be. The melody shifted. I shuddered at the shape it took. This was not a variable to be solved, it was a solution awaiting its opportunity. The song must not be allowed to end. Do the first ones still sing it? Truly I do not know, but if they do not, who will? Firim in Exile, Epilogue. Though the jailer has been defeated and the Shadowlands made whole again, I find myself unable to celebrate these victories, for I have studied the inner workings of the sepulchre, seen the powers with which the jailer sought to remake reality, and these observations fill me with a fear that shakes the very core of my being. It is clear to me now that there must be a Zereth of each force, the cosmos, and within them an inner sanctum akin to the sepulchre, and if that is true, then these sanctums must be connected on some fundamental level, a connection that the jailer sought to exploit. What he began in the sepulchre was meant to cascade outward from one Zereth to the next, until all were dominated by his power. The heart of the Shadowlands acting as a doorway to the heart of each cosmic force in turn, one after another bound to his will. But if his scheme was thwarted, then why is my mind so ill at ease? Because I have seen how fragile the pattern is, how delicate the scales that keep the six forces in balance are. And if the jailer, in his act of malevolence, left behind but the most imperceptible of cracks in that pattern, then I fear what is tiny now will only grow, until the balance itself is prone to be shattered by another force applying relentless pressure. I pray that the first ones anticipated such an eventuality, that they would leave measures in place to preserve the grand design, unless their design was never meant to endure. And that is a possibility that haunts me.